I am remaking all of my old Oblivion videos with the idea that now I'm going to be talking about the remastered version of Oblivion. So one of my first videos ever made is the major skills tier list. Now in the vanilla version of Oblivion, there's a lot of differences to the leveling system. And so picking your major skills really depended on how fast the skill leveled and what exactly you wanted to do with it. Now in the remaster, that's totally different. Because there's no more efficient leveling, there's no more attributes tied to what skills you level up, your major skills should now just be the most powerful skills that you want to use in your build. We're going to start with Alchemy. Alchemy, just like in vanilla Oblivion, is one of the most powerful things. And because of that, now it is an S major skill. In vanilla Oblivion, it wasn't because you didn't want to gain it too quickly, and it was actually pretty easy to level up. Alchemy will still be relatively easy to level up, but now gaining levels in Alchemy won't be a problem because you won't accidentally gain 2 level ups with bad attribute gains due to making a bunch of potions. So Alchemy is S tier just due to how powerful it is. And with the new perks, it is also a lot more powerful. In the base game, you could only ever have 4 active potions at once. Now at Journeyman, which is 50 skill, you can use 6 active potions, and at Master you can have up to 10 active potions at once, which is absolutely absurd. You could at all times have 3 restore health, 3 restore magicka potions, 2 restore fatigue, and I don't know, 2 whatever you feel like, a feather, a something else. It's just so many potions that you could have going all the time, which would just constantly be healing or giving you whatever you need. It's ridiculous. It does take some grinding because you need to get those ingredients, obviously, but I'm talking about it so long just because it's so absurdly broken. This alone is definitely what you would use to beat the game on mastery difficulty or to just make a crazy broken build. Next we have Acrobatics. I love Acrobatics and it's fun, but realistically it's not very good. And actually, I'm going to change the name of this last one to F, and so this is for RP purposes only. Acrobatics is not F tier because it does have a purpose. It does reduce the fatigue of jumping. It will make you jump higher, which does have value. I just think using Restoration is more of a better way to increase your acrobatics. If you're trying to use it to jump over objects, to skip certain parts of Oblivion gates, or to get to certain places that are harder to access normally, that's how you would get there with Restoration, not necessarily with the Acrobatics skill. So I wouldn't waste one of your 7 slots. It is fun, so there's nothing wrong with it, but I would not pick it in the remastered version of Oblivion, even though I did pick it quite often in vanilla. Alteration. I think Alteration has actually gone down a bit in value. I used to rank it as tier A. I think now I would move it to tier B just because there's so many more skills that I want to pick now. It's still really good. If you watched my Alteration deep dive, which maybe I have to remake that for the remaster, but it really highlights how valuable Feather is. It seems like the encumbered system with movement is slightly different, so maybe Feather doesn't speed you up quite as much, but Feather will increase your sprint speed. I've tested that. You definitely move much faster with Feather when you're sprinting. So I'd still make sure you use Feather, and getting that up early by choosing it as a major skill allows you to get Feather right away and to cast either high duration, low magnitude shield spells, or vice versa, high magnitude, low duration if you want to be really tanky for short bursts. Typically the way I play is I would do maybe 7 shield for a minute and cast 3 of those. Even with lower spell effectiveness, that's 18% extra armor for a minute that I pretty much just always keep up. And the act of casting those spells gains me a lot of alteration experience, which can be really useful and make a character a lot more tanky. So this is a valuable skill. I just think that there's others. So I'd give it a high B. Armorer changed greatly. I used to put it as S. I think I'm now going to put it at A because it's still valuable, but now you only need 25 to repair your magical equipment. And in vanilla Oblivion, you pretty much needed to pick this because without being able to repair your magical equipment, your enchanted gear, you didn't want to enchant your gear or you were forced to go to town. It was a big headache, frankly. I did not like it at all, actually. This change was very good. They swapped the 25 and 50 perks. In fact, on the UESP, they say it right here. They swapped these 2 perks. Here, I'll zoom in a bit so you can read it. Now you can repair magic items right away. And the 75 skill is still the same. At Expert, you can repair your armor and weapons to 125%. Armor gains 25% more shield. the armor that you're wearing when you over repair it. The weapons gain 12.5% more damage. Both of those are very important and very valuable. You want to do them both. With that said, you can get to 75 without choosing it as a major, so it's not S tier. I wouldn't say it's required, because after you get it to 75, there's no purpose of raising it any higher. Obviously, there's some convenience reasons there, but it's not crazy valuable anymore, because you don't really need to rush to get to 50. You need to rush to 25, which, if you know anything about leveling, that happens pretty quickly. Next, we have athletics. Athletics used to only change fatigue when running, and now there's new things where it doesn't consume any fatigue while sprinting. I think this increases its value. However, really, you don't need to sprint in this game. But it could be fun, so I think that moves it up to a low B. It's also valuable because just base athletics does increase your movement speed. That can be kind of nice to have that 20 higher and increasing faster. So picking athletics is not a bad choice. I would say anything in B tier is totally reasonable to pick. It augments a build. I think athletics is really good because if you fill out your build and you don't need any other skills, you might as well pick athletics so you move faster and you get better fatigue regeneration. Next, we have Blade. I really like some of the changes to Blade. I'm going to put this in low A tier because what happened to Blade is they totally changed the perks. These power attacks apply a weakness to normal weapons, and your regular attacks apply a bleed. Now, they have a 20% chance. So the power attacks, though, always apply the bleed. Sorry. The power attacks always apply the weakness to normal weapons. So at Master Skill, you can then increase all of your future attacks by 30% damage for 10 seconds. So you only need a power attack once every 10 seconds. And I think that's great to start a fight with a power attack, get them that normal weakness, do a few regular attacks, hopefully get a bleed on them, maybe augment that with some magic, or power attack a different enemy, hit them a few times as well until you get the bleed up so you can have multiple bleeds going or multiple poisons going. It just adds some interesting gameplay. So I think that makes Blade a lot better than it was in the original game. Even though you lost to Paralyze, I think that's okay. Blade is a great thing to have. I would always either pick Blade or Blunt unless you were going full mage, obviously. Next, we have Block, and Block has gone dramatically up in value. I would put this as a high A. In fact, I'd probably put it over Armorer. And that's because in Vanilla Oblivion, you did not want to pick all three endurance skills, and that was Block, Armorer, and Heavy Armor. And Armorer and Heavy Armor were both very valuable, and if you picked Block as well, it was very difficult to raise your endurance attribute. That's no longer a thing. If you want to stop damage, you block. And the way Block works in Oblivion is if you are using a shield, it stops 1% damage per block skill. And that doesn't matter if you're using the weakest shield in the game or the best shield in the game. Obviously, your shield also provides armor, but that's based on your heavy or light armor skill. And it only gives you that armor if you're using it with a one-handed weapon. If you're carrying a bow, you can still equip a shield and the enchants will still help you, but that shield won't count as it's equipped in terms of its spell effectiveness or shield value. So if it's got 12 shield value, you won't get 12% damage reduction from that shield. It's only if you have a one-hander, and that's so you can actively block. You're actively using the shield. Now, if you have 60 block, that means blocking an attack stops 60% damage with the shield. If you're using a two-hander, it stops 30% damage, which isn't nearly as good, but still fairly valuable. It takes a lot of fatigue in this game, it seems now, where it did not in vanilla, but fatigue is clearly different. It's used for sprinting, it's used for blocking and power attacks rather than just being a damage modifier. And as it gets higher, you also get this shield bash, which is something I have not tested out yet, but it says that you can actively use it like in Skyrim. In vanilla Oblivion, you just had a chance to randomly do a shield bash. When enemies hit you, when you got to expert. Being able to just activate it on your own is very powerful. I mean, I'm sure you've played Skyrim before, and you know that with that shield bash, you can pretty much permanently stagger certain opponents, and it can make you incredibly powerful. I also am curious at how much damage it deals, because as a master, it says it deals 150% more. I wonder if that's really powerful. Even if that shield bash is very weak, this is still A tier. I think if it's crazy broken and powerful, that'd move it to S, but I don't really see that happening. Next, we have Blunt. The changes to Blunt are very interesting, and I think I would move it just below Blade. Obviously, it depends on your build. I recommend you use it if you are doing a high difficulty playthrough. I just don't think Shield is that valuable because you never really need to stay alive that much. You have better ways to do it. by late game, by the time you have 100 skill and you're getting this huge 30% shield boost, you're probably already at the armor cap. 100 skill takes a long time to happen in the game. Now, if you do get there early, I guess this is really valuable. I just don't really see that happening. 15% shield from a power attack for 5 seconds is pretty good. So there will be a sweet spot between like 50 and 80 skill where you actually need that 15% and it is giving you that effective health and it is super valuable. So I could see you using this in a higher difficulty playthrough as a way to kind of bridge that gap from that mid game that's really difficult to that later game where you become really powerful. It's just, I think I'd rather have that weakness to weapons than just a defensive that I can overcome. The regular attacks have a 20% chance to silence. Well, I don't really know how much this bleed damage is. It's hard to compare the silence to the bleed. Because it's only a 20% chance, I don't know. It's hard to say. It seems really nice because there are certain enemies late game that are really annoying. And the fact is, if you're able to silence them for 10 seconds, that's a long time. So you can power attack to get your big shield, give them some normal attacks, and it will silence a lot of those Zivali or the Dremora in particular. Those enemies can paralyze you. Enemies can cast other burden things like the Wraiths. They can do a lot of things that can be really annoying. And they can silence you. And so this effect could be really valuable, and I could see you putting this over Blade just because of this silence. I'm going to put it below Blade because, I don't know, I just am. Because I think the shield, this perk is just too underwhelming. Because I think by that late in the game, I don't want more shield. I think Expert and Master perks should be switched. The silence should be even better, like a 40% chance. And maybe this shield, it doesn't need to be that powerful. But whatever, that's all I got. Hand to hand, I haven't tested this out, but the fact is, in the base game, attacks dealt half of the health damage that they did. And hand to hand capped out at 11 damage. With Fortify Fatigue, you could get 15 damage. Now, that is no longer part of the game. So I think you can only do 11 damage, unless if something totally changed. Maybe they changed power attacks, but I'm fairly certain that hand-to-hand is still RP purposes only. There would have to be something like power attacks would have to be far more amazing than I've ever seen. I don't see any reason to ever do this unless you want to RP a monk, which I get. If you want to do that, great. And I think it would work because you would do so much fatigue damage. And you can combine that with a damage fatigue or drain fatigue's magic, and I think this could actually be decently useful as a build, especially with the way power attacks now work. They're a lot more powerful. I don't know. I don't see myself doing that either. Okay. Now we're to the magic skills. So we already talked about Alchemy and how you can use 10 effects all at once. You also have a chance, I forgot to mention, that you always craft a second potion, which I think is really cool. You start with a 25% chance to do that if you pick it as a major skill, and you'll get to 75 a lot faster. So you'll get a lot more free potions. These are just the changes. So Conjuration isn't going to be in here. Conjuration doesn't have any changes. The thing about Conjuration in Vanilla Oblivion is it leveled so fast. It gained 6 experience per cast. And compared to something like Restoration, which gained 0.6 experience per cast, that leveled 10 times faster. Now, the magic skills seem to be leveling about the same speed. It really, if I'm casting really expensive spells, my magic skills level faster. If I cast cheap spells, they level slower. With that said, I think Conjuration I don't personally like it, and so I would probably put it in C tier for my personal preference, but just because I think that would be just too much of my own bias shining through, it's B tier. Conjuration is good, it is valuable, but I just really prefer my own character to be powerful. If you've played a lot of Oblivion and you've used summons or followers, I am positive that you've hit them way more than you ever should. So unless you're the type who really likes to watch from afar, I don't really recommend Conjuration because it frankly gets more annoying than anything. I'm not a fan of it. I just don't like it. Destruction, I think, is S tier. Same as Vanilla Oblivion, Destruction is the best way to deal damage, whether that's through weakness spells or other ways. If you fortify your Destruction, like I showed in the previous video, you're able to get it to 100 relatively quickly, and you can do insane damage, far more than anyone could ever do with Blade or Blunt. Even if you're not doing damage with Destruction, you could use weakness spells, which would make your Blade and Blunt enchants actually do high damage. So Destruction is just up there with Alchemy. It's crazy powerful, one of the best skills in the game. I'll keep going through the magic. Restoration, I think, is also S tier, because Restoration, late game, now that Restoration is it's possible to increase your restoration, where in vanilla Oblivion, it didn't really feel that way. Restoration is able to buff anything in the game, whether that is a skill or an attribute, health, magicka, fatigue. You can restore anything. It works the same way as Alchemy, except it's somehow even more versatile because it's just tied to your magicka pool. You can use magic to fortify your own magicka, to make that pool larger, to fortify your own willpower, to regenerate magicka faster. So if your restoration gets really high really quickly, your other skills will be so easy to level. I could cast 10 spells in a row from restoration to get a crazy 2 minutes of having 2,000 magicka that regenerates instantly, and then just cast conjuration spells that cost 800. And those spells would gain me multiple levels per cast. My conjuration would get up to 100 really quickly, even if it wasn't a major skill. So I think restoration itself has so much power and potential that it can be very game breaking. So these three at the top are all, they can break the game. Maybe I'll say that's what it is. Can break the game. So they're just so powerful that if you really push them to their limits, you get them to 100. The game is over if you want it to be. Heavy armor, I don't think heavy armor had any changes. Neither did light armor. So we'll talk about those next, heavy armor and light armor. Heavy armor is still better. I think light armor I'll put at B because it's just not as good as heavy armor. The reason for that is light armor has 50% less armor than heavy armor. And it is not until you get to the 100th point, and not fortified, but I mean naturally level your light armor to 100, that light armor matches heavy armor. The only downside to heavy armor is its weight, which I will put it at A tier because, well, probably high A tier. I'll put this above block. The only reason you would want light armor is because it weighs less. But with feather, your heavy armor will weigh 0 for your encumbrance. So it won't affect your sprint speed. It won't affect your sneak. And it's just really valuable. You can just use heavy armor. Early game, mid game, even by the time when you're at 80 heavy armor skill, it's so much more valuable than light armor. Obviously, RP reasons can override power reasons, and that's totally valid. There's nothing wrong with picking light armor. There's nothing wrong with picking acrobatics and hand-to-hand. But if you're trying to make a powerful build, that's not what you want to do. Illusion. Illusion's pretty much the same thing. I would put it in B like Conjuration. I would put it even lower. Maybe I'd put Illusion at C now. Because the fact is, if you want to make a custom spell for Charm, you can do 100 for 1 second, and that's a novice spell. While invisibility and everything can be really useful, with the new leveling system, it's so easy to level magical spells. I just don't think that you need it as a major skill. You know, you could drink a few potions and just cast high level spells, and you'll get it up to level 25 or 30 where you need it to be so quickly. And you certainly don't need max level illusion. There are some cool illusion spells like command and stuff, but if you're wearing armor, if you have 95% spell effectiveness, those don't work late game. And so that's definitely a lot of flawed. I'll have an illusion deep dive someday where I'll go more into that, but I just don't think it's super valuable as a major skill. Next, we'll talk about Mysticism. It's a little bit better than RP purposes only, but not by much. There is a possibility where you're trying to play on master difficulty and you're trying to augment your spell absorption or spell reflect with Mysticism. That's really the only time I would ever pick it as a major skill. Otherwise, you don't need it. Soul Trap is fine to cast, but that's one spell and it doesn't cost that much, and you only need 25 Mysticism to do it. That can happen really early. Speaking of that illusion, you do need 50 illusion to unlock invisibility, but if you get the Jonestone, which needs 10 renown, that unlocks invisibility at the spell making altar, and then you can do a 5-second invisibility spell. And that's I think you only need 25 skill. So after you get illusion to 25 skill, you have all the invisibility you'll ever need to complete all the Thieves Guild quests or Dark Brotherhood quests. So it can be valuable, but I just don't see you picking it as a skill. Just like acrobatics, these can be valuable, but you really don't need it as a major skill to get the value out of these skills. We'll talk about security, because that's an easy one. Security is worthless. If you want to pick it as an RP skill, that's fine. It is a little bit more valuable in the remaster than it was in Vanilla Oblivion. And that's because in Vanilla Oblivion, it was not difficult to pick a very hard lock with 5 security skill. As soon as you learn that timing, it was pretty easy. And now I think they made very easy locks way easier. Like, I don't think I could fail them if I tried, but they made very hard locks harder. So as you get higher skill, they do get easier. With that said, you can still pick them at 5 skill. And lockpicks are easy to come by, and by late game, you can get the skeleton key by level 10 if you want, and that completely negates the skill. There's just a lot of reasons to not pick security. If you're RPing as a master thief, go ahead, pick it. There's nothing wrong with that, but it's just not a very good skill. Next, we have Speechcraft. That's somehow even worse than these two. If it had its own tier, it'd be like double F, but I'll just put it at the bottom of F tier. Speechcraft is absolutely terrible. Worst one, never pick it for any reason, frankly. I know I'm sort of putting these in order, but these three at the top are all pretty much the same. They're just really powerful. Next, we have Mercantile. They changed the way Mercantile levels, so that was one that had to change. It just levels faster. If you want to sell 10 items at once, it will gain more experience. I think they say it at the top up here, actually. Experience is determined by the price of items sold instead of a flat rate. But I just don't think gold is that much of an issue in this game. I mean, now, due to the leveling changes, you probably will want to be training your high-level skills right away. So getting more gold earlier is better. So there is some value here, and so I wouldn't put it in F tier. But it's, again, pretty bad. I'd almost never pick it now just because there's so many better options. Because now every skill has so much more value as picking it as a major skill. Sneak, really, this is kind of an RP one, too. I'll put it as B. It's just illusion, which I put as C, pretty much negates it. If you have only 5 sneak but you go invisible, you're still invisible and people don't see you. So you don't really need high sneak skill. Doesn't really do anything. They did do a kind of cool thing where now daggers deal 8 times more damage, and other one-handed things will do 6 times damage, just like in base sneak, the base game. So maybe this 8 times damage could be kind of cool. I just don't think it's enough. One-handed attacks with sneak at high level already ignore armor and do 6 times damage. Daggers just do too little for 8 times damage to really mean anything. So I don't know. Maybe you want to do some pickpocketing. Really, it's mostly an RP skill, to be frank. But it's got some value. If you like sneaking, you should pick it. If that's the build you're going with, pick it. It's not terrible, but you could very reasonably put this in C tier. And then we have Marksman. And this is the one I've been avoiding because I haven't tested it yet, if I'm being totally honest. 25% chance to paralyze for 5 seconds is 5 times higher than it was in the base game. And I'm actually really nervous about getting to high level in this game and fighting a bunch of bandits with bows, because I felt they paralyzed me way more than 5% is what it felt like, but I think it was actually 5%. 25% is a lot. That is a high chance to paralyze targets. Marksman can do pretty solid damage. I don't think they really increased it though. And so I actually think it's worse. Blade and Blunt, it seems like there's new interesting mechanics that they added with the power attacks that cause them to do really high damage, where Marksman just doesn't have that. Because it doesn't have power attacks, you can't fortify your fatigue anymore. I don't really see a ton of value in Marksman. I'm going to put it as a low B. Obviously, if you want to play an archer, you pick Marksman, period. Doesn't matter where it is on this tier list. But it does have a big problem. I did test out all of the blade and blunt weapons, and this formula from Vanilla Oblivion still works, where these numbers line up with what is happening in Oblivion. With that, except power attacks. I don't know what's going on with power attacks, because they're just not consistent, and so I'm a little bit confused about those. With 30% weakness to damage from a blade master attack, this attack would be 35 times 1.3, and each hit would be 45 damage, which is pretty good. And you could add a weapon enchant on that. That's maybe you add a custom enchant that's 50 damage. You could be doing this plus 50 every swing. So with a Grand Soldium, you can do a custom enchant 17, 17, and 16 for fire, frost, and shock damage. So it's 50 damage every swing. You can do your power attack that'll hit for 50, add that 30% weakness, and then whap. And you could add weakness and just hit them really fast and do a lot of damage. Marksman, it's a lot slower. This is with the perfect amber arrows too. So the Daedric arrows are only 15. Chances are you're going to be having a Daedric bow for a while or lower. Well, we could say the perfect amber bow, but that means your max damage here is 41. It's not very great. You can add really interesting enchants that I would say you could do this plus 60 reasonably. You can do each damage type for a duration for 2 seconds. So you could do fire, frost, and shock, 10 damage for 2 seconds each. That would be 60 damage, and that fits on a Grand Soldium custom enchant because arrows are slower. you hit them, you can wait the 2 seconds before your next arrow hits them. So every arrow will do 101 damage. But the whole point of that working is that they are slower, where the blade is doing this 95 faster. I just don't see it being very valuable. You could say, oh, well, but being at range is valuable. Well, for me, honestly, I just miss more with Marksman. Maybe I just suck. That could be part of it. I just think without Fortify Fatigue, unless if something changes, Marksman is going to take a long time to level, and it's not going to be very good. I just don't see it being a super strong build. The Stealth Archer was pretty weak in Oblivion, and I don't think the remaster changed it. Obviously, I might update this in the future if I test it out and things are totally different. But as of right now, I'm going to put it at B. All right, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed.